Well, we have a wonderful tour. We're playing a program that involves the first and last quartets of Beethoven and a wild piece by a young German composer, Jörg Widmann, called the Hunting Quartet. We're very thrilled to have Michael Dahlenburg join us for this tour. Michael is the principal cellist of the Melbourne Chamber Orchestra, a wonderful musician.
I first met him when he was playing with the Hamer Quartet. I had the privilege to coach them a few times, and then they came and worked with me as emerging artists at the Australian Chamber Orchestras.
And as well as being a cellist, he's a very good conductor as well.
I always wanted a career that was diverse. It really is quite an honour to sit and be part of this ensemble, especially with Fran, so we studied together, and Steve, who was my mentor at ACO, and Dale, who, I watch from afar in MSO. It feels like a privilege to be here.
The quartet, of course, wish Sharon and Slava all the very best for their upcoming adventures in parenthood. It's a wonderful, exciting thing.
We're actually starting the program with his final quartet, the Opus 135.
Opus 135 is an incredible piece of music.
It lives in a world unto itself.
It's a bit more sparse than where he'd been previously. It's actually just a lot of fun to play, if that makes sense. It's not this dark, brooding Beethoven anymore.
There's a great sense of playfulness in the outer movements.
I feel it's turned a corner and it's really full of joy.
And it's almost like after the big monumental Opus 127 and Opus 130 and the Grosser Fugue, the late quartets, he's almost like returning to the innocence of his youth.
I think all of Beethoven's music is brave. I think it's brave writing something when you're deaf. I think it's brave writing something when you must let it out. If you don't, then you don't have your art, and your art is your reason for living.
For me, the slow movement it's the emotional epicenter of the work, and I think it lives among his greatest slow movements.
The slow movement is actually much more contemplative rather than serious.
It's in the key of D flat major, which is such a beautiful, warm key, almost like chocolate. It's like he's looking back on his life and reflecting and asking the eternal question.
On first listen, you think, well, what is Beethoven doing? He's built this beautiful egg, and then he sort of takes it to a cliff and then drops it. And yet, it's just some of the most ingenious writing, even compared to today. Instead of music going in straight lines, it sort of goes in zigzags like that. It's just beautiful. To think that was one of the last things he did is quite exceptional. And then when you juxtapose that against 18.3, which is in reality the first one he wrote, it's just a remarkable evolution of writing.
So this quartet, the Opus 18, number 3, the very first quartet that Beethoven wrote, it is an absolutely exquisite entry into the world of string quartet writing. Beethoven actually came to the string quartet quite late. He was well into his career before he really tackled the genre, probably because he was well aware of the genius of Haydn and Mozart who had come before him.
It's a vivacious young man. It's a man who is showing that he's on an equal footing in Vienna with everybody else.
But with this quartet, Beethoven takes the genre in a new direction.
This is the beginning of the eventual master of the string quartet, just starting out.
The fact that he's taken forms that exist in the classical structure and he's adding to them and moving on and going to very interesting places that you wouldn't expect the music to go to. In a Haydn quartet, it wouldn't have gone there, but he takes you there, and I think that's fascinating to observe that.
It follows the rules of rhetoric and sonata form and all these sort of musical conventions, and then all of a sudden it doesn't. which is so very typically Beethoven. It's actually the first quartet that he wrote, and even from day one he decided he wasn't going to be normal.
Widmann came to our attention last year when we performed his octet, and his music came as a real revelation to all of us because he is so fascinated with sounds. And this particular piece that we're performing is an absolutely wild ride. It's possibly one of the craziest pieces I've ever performed.
So the quartet obviously has a story, and in this case it's describing a hunt. Group of 4 people going on a hunt, and it's all very jovial and everyone's, having a great time, and the hunt goes awry. But I don't want to see anything else.
He starts at a place that everyone feels comfortable with. He's starting with a quote from some Schumann, which sounds exactly like a quote from many Beethoven symphonies, and the rhythm, the dum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba dum. The listener is eased into that. This is fun, it's a hunt. That's where we begin. And from there, he's able to then take the listener on a journey.
Well, the Widmann is an exceptionally well-written piece of music. It has lots of extended techniques. It's not just play the notes on the page and thus the music is born. It's actually a lot more complicated than that. There are extended techniques that each of us has to do with our instrument or with our voice, so it becomes somewhat theatrical.
There are things in it that are quite liberating.
Whipping our bows through the air, using the wood of our bows, we're using the bows on the backs of our instruments to create a cracking sound. The list of unconventional techniques goes on, and so it's a challenge learning this piece because he has so many instructions in the music.
And sometimes these things can be written in a way that feels like it could be expendable, but Widmann somehow writes it that it becomes crucial.
So I think that the audience is going to be in for a real treat. It'll be quite a shock, but the dramatic element of this piece is just palpable.
I know that we're going to have a lot of fun performing it.
It's a privilege to play that, sandwiched in the middle of 2 great pillars of quartet music.
We're very fortunate to have the skills of Andy Packer, who was the director of the Slingsby Theatre Company. He is going to add a whole dramatic element to this program that I think will be really exciting and effective. I mean, the Widmann is such a piece of drama. It feels in a way like this program is going to take on a life of its own, and so we've decided to bring in someone who can, without taking away from the music at all, but add an element of theatre to what we're doing.